So the other day I was on Reddit and I found a really interesting kind of comment about how to manage pain. And this person asked, how can they manage their chronic pain? I don't remember the exact condition, but a lot of responses and replies were, well, have you tried using a TENS unit? And a lot of other replies said that it worked really well for them. I also did a poll on YouTube and I asked my subscribers the question, do you use a TENS unit to help with chronic pain? I got 38 votes and 61% of you guys, wow, said yes. 11% said no, but I've tried one before. 21% said no, but I've heard about it. And 8% no, what's a TENS unit? So I would say this is a pretty good majority of you, over half, 60% are using the TENS unit. And if you're unfamiliar to one of these devices, what it can do for your pain, what is it, how it works, and that kind of thing. With chronic pain, one thing that if you haven't kind of figured this out already is that there's no one size fits all approach for even like medications, right? A lot of people have different responses to such things as medications. So similarly with TENS, it may or may not work with you. There's no 100% guarantee, right? Because everybody's different. And the thing about pain is there's so much that goes into pain itself and you feeling pain and perceiving pain because it is a response and sensation that is ultimately rendered and created by your brain, that there's a lot that goes into it. With TENS, studies will show that, it works for a large population, maybe this population, maybe this doesn't work for those people. So some people find it very successful and very, very helpful, and other people's not so much. But kind of like pros and cons, if you were to weigh it, I would say the pros in attempting a device like these is much more like low risk and just makes more sense. Why? Because one, they're not super expensive. Like at the time that I bought one of these like more commercial devices, it was like less than $30. And it comes with a rechargeable battery, and you basically, the cost of using it is basically recharging it. So either buying replacement batteries or recharging it, like plugging in like a USB cord. And you compare that to things like taking continued medications, or you can combine it with medications or tapering off and lowering your medication. It's going to be a cheaper cost overall. So I see that as a plus. The second is side effects. And going back to how everybody is different, right? Some people may have more severe side effects. If you ever looked at those commercials for like a medication for, some other condition, right? Even if it seems like a more milder condition, there's like a whole thing on the bottom about what the side effects are. If you hear it on the radio, they even have to fast forward it to fit it into the airtime, right? Also, the third thing is it may be covered by your insurance or it may be subsidized. So it might not even be a high cost or any cost to you. And depending on where you live, even if you're watching this around the world, you may or may not need a doctor's prescription for this. So your results may vary. With that said, well, what is one kind of no-no or limitation, contraindication, if you will, to using one of these devices? Now, I won't go over the full list, but basically the gist of it is if you have certain issues like health issues, then using a device like this may not be safe for you. So this is more because how it works is it sends electrical signals. So if you have a pacemaker, a heart condition, seizures, how does this work? And why should you learn about how a TENS unit works anyways and not just slap it on and just hope that it works? With anything in life in general, isn't it better and makes more sense? It's to understand how something works, then you can probably get the most out of it. What we're kind of finding out now is that the more we actually learn about how pain works, it reduces things like our fear and our anxieties regarding our condition and our pain or our pain story. And overall, that can reduce our pain and even help to treat it. So that kind of makes sense. So this is why I'm kind of such a proponent of educating people about how things work when it comes to pain, especially when it comes to using a device like this, which may actually cause fear in some people because it sends an electrical signal and it makes it does it shock you, So the premise of how a device like a TENS works is basically based on gate theory. Now, gate theory is kind of a more older established theory for pain. It isn't the most kind of up-to-date scientific, holistic approach to pain, but it's basically how the TENS unit is designed to work. And what we can do and what we can kind of gather from this is we can kind of have an appreciation for gate theory in helping us to modulate and control our pain signals that are sent to our brain, and combine that with more modern kind of theories and models for pain, such as the biopsychosocial model, to help us kind of get the full picture and the most benefit from pain. We feel pain because our brain tells us we are in pain. Our brain senses there's danger. We feel pain because it's a protective mechanism, because back in the day, we were chased by like a lion or something, and if we got bit, we should probably know and tend to the injury or something like that. Fast forward to modern day, we don't have like a lion chasing us, but we have other things like anxiety, or tripping on a rock while we're hiking, or going to work, or workplace disputes, or relationship issues, or having an interview to worry about. Right? So much can go into actually our pain mechanism for feeling pain that's told by our brain. But one thing we can do to help kind of minimize and control this is using what gate theory tells us. We have these kind of things in our body that sense pain. The old term is like pain receptor, but we think of it not so much as a specific pain receptor, and that's actually a myth. We don't have a specific pain receptor. Like I don't have a pain receptor in my pinky that kind of when I pinch on it, we feel pain, because there's actually many ways that a signal is sent to us, what we call nociceptive, to sense pain. For example, you can feel a pinch and that can cause like a slight discomfort versus like a deep crush, right? Or heat can be painful, or even like cold can be painful, right? So temperature. So we have all these kind of like receptors. And what they kind of do is they send a signal using our neurons, which is kind of like a cell that sends a signal, and they send these signals to our spinal cord, and then it goes up to our brain, and our brain receives all these signals because we have a lot of sensations and we perceive a lot of stimuli in our day-to-day, right? We have our vision, we have our hearing, we have like our own body. And then our brain ultimately, because it's receiving so many signals, it has to decide and kind of sort through what we should be alerted to. Analogy is like you put on a piece of clothes, you first sense it right away. But after a while, your body and your mind kind of gets used to it, and it's not so much in your forefront, and you think about other things that, you know, may come into your like world from your environment. So we kind of get used to it. And that's the same thing with how our brain processes all these signals that come into our body that may be perceived as pain. So how gate theory works is some of these work to minimize the signal and attenuate it, if you will. So if a signal from my pinky is like the one that is the pathway for pain is trying to travel, if there's another one that kind of distracts it and minimizes it and works in opposite. So if you think of it in terms of like plus and minus, like the plus is going to add to the pain and the chances, increase the chances that my brain will feel pain. But if something else like a light rubbing, a light touch were to kind of minimize and work in the opposite and subtract from that signal, then that signal will not make it to my brain. And so it will be less likely that I will perceive pain from there. Another way we can understand how gate theory works and how TENS unit plays on this gate theory is using a metaphor. So the chat AI bot I asked the question gave me a pretty good metaphor. And they said, think of the gate theory of pain like a car's speedometer. The speedometer shows how fast the car is going, right? Well, our bodies have a painometer that shows how much pain we are feeling. And just like a car's speed, which can be controlled by pressing the gas pedal or the brakes, the amount of pain we feel can be controlled by our brain and other things we do. So other things as well. Imagine that there is a gate that controls how much pain we feel, kind of like a gas pedal. When we experience pain, it's like the car is going too fast and the painometer is showing a high reading. But just like how you can control a car's speed by pressing the brakes or shifting into a lower gear, you can control the amount of pain you feel by using your brain or applying pressure to the painful area, kind of like distraction with the TENS unit. These actions can be like closing the gate, reducing the amount of pain we feel, just like slowing down a car. So the gate theory of pain helps us to understand that just like we can control a car's speed, we can also control the amount of pain we feel. So I actually like this metaphor a lot. And one way we can think about how a TENS unit works is it's applying the brakes on the car and slowing down your speed so that you don't hit that high reading where it kind of sets off and you feel pain. So it's not just one thing like controlling the gas pedal where we kind of have that pain coming in maybe from whatever it may be, the cause of injury, right? Sometimes we don't even know. But one thing we can do is slow it down. So what it does, a TENS unit does, is it works on another mechanism that also feeds into and plays into the speed. So how many of you have like had like a pain, maybe you stepped on something, right? And you like moved around, or you rubbed it, or you jumped around, or you did something else to kind of distract your body in that signal, right? So that's kind of how gate theory works when it comes to a TENS unit. So one thing when I first like heard about it, I was like, oh my God, does this thing like shock you, right? Some of you may be like having concerns about, I don't want to like shock myself, right? This actually doesn't send a shocking signal, like in terms of like electrical, like not that intense and like scary if you think about it. So if you think about like acupuncture, it works very, very similarly in that what it does is it distracts the signals by working on some other pathways that are like less painful. So to me, what this feels like when I put this on is more of like a kind of like a prick or like a tickle kind of thing. And it actually feels kind of good to me personally. Now, everybody may perceive it very differently in how they feel things. It depends on how sensitive you are, how much of pain you have, how high you need to crank this. The second reason I wanted to make this video is, besides the education piece, is to basically minimize people using it incorrectly and basically decreasing the chances of it working over in the long term, because your brain can actually get used to this device and kind of not get the full benefits for it in the long term. So hopefully that explains, by the way, how a TENS unit works. Basically, it sends electrical signal that kind of distracts your body from sending the real signals that are being perceived as pain. And it's kind of like rubbing it, tapping on it, and like distracting it, if you will, kind of like a simplified analogy. How should you not use this? The wrong way to use this is to just slap it on where you feel pain and then crank it up, which is what I saw in the comment. And that's not how you should use it, because that's not how a TENS unit is designed to work.